We are pleased to welcome a stellar set of panelists to our virtual panel discussion, and a warm welcome to our attendees as well. Introducing myself, my name is Nidhi Anand, and I'm a partner at Chadha & Chadha. I'm a patent attorney who's passionate about securing and protecting intellectual property for a diverse portfolio of stakeholders. I will be co-moderating this discussion with my colleague, Mr. Tarun Gandhi. Introducing Mr. Gandhi. Mr. Gandhi is an intellectual property lawyer, senior partner at Chadha & Chadha, and head of the firm's patent prosecution and enforcement practice. He has more than 12 years of experience and specializes in providing strategic counseling and securing optimal IP protection for his clients. He has been consistently recommended for patent prosecution in India by IIM Patent 1000 for 3 consecutive years now. His latest publication is the Indian chapter on a comparative international designs law for LESI. Moving on, I would now like to introduce our experienced panelists who in the next 60 to 90 minutes will help us deliver on insightful takeaways from the ensuing discussion. First off is Mr. Shreyas Bakshi. Mr. Bakshi is an innovation workshopper and an author. He has authored the book titled Dealing with the Mirage, Institutionalizing Innovation. He has nearly 35 years of experience in leading, managing, and facilitating innovations in diverse domains and contexts. He is currently the Vice President for Innovation at the automotive sector of Mahindra & Mahindra Limited. His passion is to institutionalize innovation across the organization. Welcome, Mr. Bakshi.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Dr. Satish Tiwari. Dr. Tiwari is the head of IP Analytics and Intelligence at Airbus. He is also the head of IP at Airbus India. Before joining Airbus, Dr. Tiwari worked with GE as an IP manager for more than 10 years, serving a number of GE businesses. Dr. Tiwari has a PhD in Physical Sciences from IISc Bangalore and about 10 years of postdoctoral experience in various areas of physical sciences and magnetism. He has about 30 publications to his name in globally reputed journals. Welcome, Dr. Tiwari.
Next, we have on the panel Ms. Ishita Shivli. Ms. Shivli is the Vice President of Apollo Research and Innovations, a division of Apollo Hospitals Enterprise Limited, focused on scouting, evaluating, deploying, and integrating innovations across Apollo hospitals. She has over 15 years of rich experience in consulting, investment banking, and analytics, having worked across industry segments, including pharma, logistics, FMCG, manufacturing, and consumer goods, and leading companies like Hewlett-Packard, Jubilant Life Sciences, and Grant Thornton. Welcome, Ms. Shivli. The next esteemed panelist that we have with us is Mr. Praveen Hungun. Mr. Hungun is the Chief Technologist and Global Head, Technovation Center at Wipro Limited. With over 3 decades of experience in the industry, he's focused on driving digital transformation in today's rapidly evolving disruptive world. His expertise cuts across the life cycle of innovation, from conceptualization and ideation to design and build to thought leadership and also enterprise client innovation adoption. Most recently, he was responsible for setting up the Silicon Valley Innovation Center in Mountain View, California, US for his organization. Welcome, Mr. Hungun. Thank you all the panelists for joining us today.
Now, before we start the discussion, I would like to share that the last 15 minutes is the allotted, 10 to 15 minutes is the allotted Q&A session with our audience. Now, we request when you send in your questions, if possible, please send in the name of the panelist the question is directed to. We will attempt to take as many questions as possible. Now, setting the context of our roundtable discussion, innovation has been the buzzword for more than a decade. The objective here with this roundtable discussion is to discuss the practicalities involved around fostering a culture of innovation within an organization. Basically, what we want to establish is a practical and industry-specific advice on fostering innovation. We believe that innovation should not be limited as always being technical in nature. It can also be conceptualized in daily course of business. well beyond the confines of a laboratory. In line with the theme of the discussion, we have a diverse panel to provide a wholesome discussion around industry practices of different sectors. Kickstarting the discussion, my first question to the panel is, in your experience, where does the industry stand in differentiating between innovation and invention?
Yeah, so typically the way in which I see and I've observed people get completely mixed up between the two. But once I put up a small scale in front of people, saying just try and measure the impact, okay, between what is one is the impact level, and other is invention always expects something newness to the world. So if I actually define innovation as generating disproportionate value from concepts that are new to the context, you will notice, and if you take the complete spectrum around product, process, business models, and across everything, that's how the innovation comes across. You would notice that patents or invention are typically around products. Inventions are also necessarily around technologies or products. But if you take a wider campus of or canvas of, let's say, processes and business models and everything, then you get innovation, which is a much broader canvas as compared to inventions. And invention actually requires, and you make a degree of innovations, improvements, jugards, all of that, and then you show, okay, invention is like a great new body of knowledge. Then these two things, one is a canvas, and other is a spectrum. Then people get to see the things in the right perspective. That has been my experience. Happy to listen to others as to how they have experienced the difference.
That's a good perspective. Ms. Shivli, would you like to add to this?
So, as kids, we were always told to differentiate between invention and discovery. I think now the term innovation can be added to that mix because, like Mr. Bakshi said, a lot of people use it interchangeably, but actually it is not. Fundamentally, they're different. Inventing is creating something new, whereas innovation is adding value to it and making it more usable and, increasing the acceptance and improving the way things work, right? So a light bulb is an invention, but an LED bulb is an innovation, right? To put it very simply. So I read a very interesting analogy which explains why innovation is becoming such an important thing in the industry today. So it said that if you take a pebble and you throw it in a pond, and the pebble is your invention, once you've thrown it in the pond, there are ripples. Innovation is the ripples. If you don't have an invention and you don't have ripples, the pond is stagnant, right? So no company, no industry, or even a country can actually continue being stagnant. It needs to progress. And for that, you need innovation. And that's why increasingly, even if the inventions in a company are less, the more you innovate, the more you can tackle competition, you can reduce your costs, you can make your outcomes better. If you want to survive and you want to do better, I think innovations is what is driving today. And that's why in the last 5-6 years, more and more companies are focusing on innovation. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Dr. Tiwari, do you see a coexistence of innovation and invention in your sector?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I'm personally pretty clear about these two words. For me, invention is a word from the science and technology space, whereas innovation is right in the middle of the techno-commercial space, as I call it. So invention is bringing something new that didn't exist in science. When I think about innovation, it is about taking something which may be an invention or which may be just something that people have tried before but never applied in day-to-day commercial life, bring it to use. For example, bring some invention which is already there but which has never been utilized in aerospace, my industry. To a product or a process. So innovation is bringing something new in the way we do our business or what products we send to the market. So yes, innovation is very, very important for us because we are, among other things, we are the most regulated market, industry in the world. Every government loves to make new laws, new rules, new regulations for us. And so if you see last maybe 30 to 40 years, you'll see that there has been magical changes in amount of, for example, exhaust gases that have come out of aircraft engines, the noise and those kind of things. Those are always environment and other kind of noise pollution and things like that are always a challenge for us. But also because flying is whether you accept it or not, a very expensive business. So reducing the cost, making it more friendly to common person. So by that, expanding your customer base is also a big challenge for us, and we have continuously been innovating in those areas. So yes, it's very, very important, and it's a very dynamic business that we have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gungun, could you add a perspective of emerging technologies in today's times to the coexistence of innovation and invention in your sector?
Yeah, sure. I think while we see two yardsticks, right? Never been made before, never been implemented. If you take that lens, right, you'll see a very clear distinction between innovation and invention, right? I'll probably go a little bit more into innovation from a services concept, right? Because what are skills required for innovation? Typically, marketing, technology, strategic skills become very important for innovation, right? Innovation spans across the organization, typically in the services industry, right? I mean, invention can be lab-centric, and I think Subi also brought it on earlier very, very well. Innovation will span across the organization in terms of coverage and impact, right? And see, a lot of things are changing today out there, right? Customers today are no longer looking for system integration as a service, right? They're looking at business partners. They're looking at comprehensive business solutions that can solve problems end to end, right, across the value chain. So from that perspective, if you look at the way the disruption is happening across models, processes, emerging tech, the whole digital native behavior, the convergence is so rapid and so complex today that putting innovation to work across IPs, products, platforms, tools, accelerators, frameworks, or even the processes itself becomes very, very important. I think the reality of invention versus innovation and is very stark today, and at least the post-pandemic world, we're seeing a lot of emerging tech-led innovations that are having a huge impact on what we do on a daily basis. We'll talk about it more as we go along, but that's my perspective. I can give a couple of other good examples if you want, right?
We would love to hear those.
Yeah, one quick one. If I look at last year, a global Swiss bank wanted to go and get into remote working environment for continued operations, pandemic, lockdown, right? And the whole virtual desk as a platform was the need of the hour, right? And we were able to help the Swiss bank move into rapid implementation of almost the entire workforce offsite, right? And almost 90,000 plus users across 4 geographies got remote work access in 3 to 4 days, 3 to 4 weeks, sorry, right? Now, it also reduced. So innovation, one is do something which is impossible, and it also gave a 30% operational savings in the process for the bank. Right now, you can really look at what innovation can do. There was a product available, there was a service stack available, the way it got translated into innovation and a scale rollout in 4 weeks' time was phenomenal, right? A very quick example I can talk of from an emerging tech perspective. There are multiple themes. I'll focus on hybrid augmented intelligence today, right? Where a man and a machine will come together, they'll work together, they create productivity and drive efficiencies. Now, if I look at innovation from that standpoint, we're able to go back in the pandemic world and do things which we could have probably never thought of in the past, right? I'll probably not deep dive on the technology elements, but if you look at things like general intelligence, the whole GAN element around it, the 5G, mixed reality, immersive gaming tech, if you can put all of these together, today I can bring a fashion store into your living room and allow you to not just do measurements, not just design your own fashion patterns and styles that you need, but you can also do virtual try on an avatar in your living room today. Similarly, a car, you can actually design a car in your living room today, right? So to bring, while the first case of the entire workspace was to take the office into a living room, we're talking of big businesses coming into living rooms and allowing people to work and leverage at their convenience, right? So massive. I mean, the impact can be very, very big out there.
So is it
Thank
safe
you.
to say that both invention and innovation go hand in hand? And innovation is much bigger and it helps an organization address its long-term goals. Is it safe to say this at this point in time? Sure, Mr. Bakshi.
No, it's a bigger in terms of canvas. I think the bigger in terms of technology complexity scale, I think invention will be much higher. So that is where I typically tend to put the canvas and the scale together. Otherwise, you end up in a debate saying, how can you say invention is smaller than innovation? So I'm just trying to put the two things together. There are two dimensions. Both dimensions have to be taken into.
So that's exactly what was the purpose of this, the discussion point was, so that they go hand in hand. Now one is not bigger than the other, right? Okay, fine. So I think we've established that.
I think this has been an important perspective that you added, Mr. Bakshi, wherein you said that innovation is a broader perspective. It's a broader canvas. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so I think also it takes into account the R&D spends for an organization. Also, I would like to bring in Mr. Dr. Tiwari here, who said that, of course, in his business, it is one of the most expensive businesses in the world. So I'm sure there's a huge part of revenue that is allocated to R&D spends. So what do you think, is R&D spend the sole criteria which drives innovation?
See, for big businesses in the world and businesses which are our nature, engineering, you can always take a number and tell that a particular company, technical company, will spend about that much in R&D. So it's 3 to 5% of the total revenue that gets spent in R&D. A good company might spend 6%, 7%, but no company will spend either 0 or 50% of the revenue R&D. So point is, what I'm telling is that in similar companies, R&D spend is more or less same or very similar, if you take the exceptions out. But companies, the spectrum of innovation is widely varied. Widely, there are companies which are extremely innovative, and there are companies which spend a lot of money in R&D, and they don't innovate much. So, if you ask me, R&D spend is more or less like a pass mark subject for the companies. You don't spend in R&D, you don't do something new. But it just qualifies companies to be innovative. The real innovation happens from other reasons. The first reason, the top reason, if you ask me, for a company to be innovative is that the company's leadership knows what they want to do. That is the number one reason. Everything comes after that. If they know what they want to do, that means they have done good homework about what is their business model, who are their customers, potential customers, where they want to grow, okay, which part of the value chain they want to occupy, how broad they want to go. And then if they know their customers very well, what their customers' unmet needs are, even more than what their customers like to have, it's what their pain points are and where will you remove their pain points. Then you have to have a very good sort of, what should I say, a channel which takes that information from the market and translates into what has to be developed. Okay, so good market intelligence, good translation into that. First, good focus by the leadership, good market intelligence, good translation of that market intelligence into doable goals within the company, and then good technologists, good guys. I'm talking about technical innovation, but there are product innovation, process innovation, things like that. But just taking the technical innovation as a focus area, you have to have people who understand what is needed, and then they can go around, look for various technologies available, select, work, and know when they're they are ready for the product. So it is a just to make it short, it is, of course, it is a R&D spend, but it's also the processes in the company, the kind of human resources they have, the kind of focus that company has, and the kind of good understanding and intelligence that company has about the market and their customers. So that's what I told first time also. Innovation is more about how you do your business, who your customers are, and how you satisfy their needs, rather than what cool inventions you have with you.
I think as we would have imagined, there's always a lot that would go into innovation for aerospace industry. So here in Ms. Chibli, I would want to bring you in, wherein I would want to know, how does the healthcare space work? So as we are all running through the troubled times of this pandemic, so we would all expect that there would be huge R&D spends that would usually be involved in the healthcare space. So how does it work for this sector?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, R&D spend is it's definitely an important factor, but like Dr. Tiwari said, it's not your core or the only factor that drives innovation, right? R&D spend will help you maybe create the infrastructure that you need, create a structure around how you want to run research and development within your organization, help you to establish the bare minimum, right? And but beyond that, I think a lot of things that you need to look at points like what identify the gap in the industry. What is it that the customer wants specifically, right? How can I fulfill those gaps? In fact, like you talked about the pandemic, right? In the last 1 year, and this is for doctors, not just at Apollo, it's across healthcare organizations. They have the number of papers that have been published in the last 1 year around COVID is outstanding, right? And the reason being that the doctors have made observations, they have studied, they've tried to understand what is happening, what helps, what improves. That also helps, because tomorrow somebody is going to pick up these research and these papers and say, okay, you know what, I clearly, this is the need of the hour, right? So it need not just be how much money you spend, it's also how you use that money and what is the outcome of that investment, right? For the the example of the papers alone, the number of papers published by Apollo clinicians is very close to that, just marginally less than those published by AIMS, whereas the R&D spend of the two organizations is completely different, right? But you are doing something to identify what is happening. So last year we did a project with the Telangana government where multiple organizations came together and said, can we develop low cost ventilators? Because for sure, when this pandemic takes over, there'll be a need across the country. And so it's about coming together, it's about working together, and it need not just be the money, it could also be who is there and how you use your minds, the mind share, as well as what you already have knowledge, and then put it to use. The R&D spend will just help you to actually take it to that level, but not the only factor for sure.
Right. So, Mr. Bakshi, as far as the automotive sector is concerned, do you see there's a shift from, earlier there was always this focus of the organizations on setting up a department and spending a lot of money there. But I think what we have seen, there's a paradigm shift in terms of acquiring a lot more talent, which could actually undertake that R&D and come up with those inventions and make the business more innovative. How does the automotive sector work in this area?
See, I would not be able to share too much about the automotive sector or something like that, but I can tell you in general what I've seen and the approach that I recommend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, as we have been sort of established very nicely, that innovation is all about outcomes, right? And it has to be implementable outcomes and customer valued, and it has to meet some pain point and all of that. But tell me, how will this value, let's call all of that as value, okay? Value for the end beneficiary or all stakeholders, whosoever is coming into the picture. The value is going to come through some initiatives or what we call as projects. Okay. Then who's going to drive those projects? People. Net, if the people are really not equipped to do things in the right way, then they're going to continue doing the new things in the old way.
Right.
Right. Even now, you would have seen some people use mobile phones, as if they're going to just bang the whole thing, end to end, and then work like that. No, so it's like that. How are you going to equip people? When you come to people part of it, it's really how do you equip the people, and also not just equip in terms of the skills and other things. It's also about the whole attitude and mindset and all those kind of things. How do you create a complete enabling environment? And it's not just people who are expected to do innovations. It's also about the leadership, how they're going to foster it correctly, what kind of, and see, sometimes what you notice is just a pat on the back. Yeah, boss, you're right. Please go ahead. Don't worry, I'm there. Is a kind of a good enough satisfaction or a kind of comfort for the teams to really go and do big things, right? And sometimes just a bad look, or just turning away your face and just giving a blank eye to a person will tell him, and he'll just throw everything down. So that these are some smaller pieces, and if you get into the people dimension of it, because of whatever my passion and my experiences around institutionalizing innovation, we'll have enough stories where some great innovators or great minds have been like put down, and some people are just completely discarded by the normal appraisal process. They have come around and turned around the whole productivity to an extent where now they became the blue-eyed boys of the management. So all these things are completely possible. So yeah, people are the key drivers to everything, and we keep hearing these debates about mindset, this, that, blah blah blah, all of that. So that's completely different dynamics, and of course, we can have another long roundtable around it. But I just sort of putting a small summary around this, and happy to understand other perspectives also on the subject.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point made. Mr. Hungun, I would like to bring you here, wherein with the emerging technologies, the pace at which the emerging technologies evolve, does the research and development that goes around does it also lead to the same pace in terms of the creation of IP? Maybe it's a similar number of patents that are generated out of it. Does it work like that in your space?
Okay, so Tarun, I think it's a good point, because if I look at so it's not, there's never a differentiation with what is important, invention or innovation. They all work hand in hand, right? Now, if I look at R&D spend itself specifically, right, in terms of, so maybe let's go back and look at a few examples, right? If you look at top 5 innovators from an enterprise perspective and top 5 R&D spends, right? I'm not going to name them, it is in the public domain, but the top 3 at least spend $40+ billion in R&D, right? And they don't appear in the top 5 innovators list, right? Interesting data points. Look at Apple, right? It's number 7 in R&D spend, but it's number 1 as an innovator. Look at Amazon, right? It doesn't even appear in the top 20 R&D spends, right? And it appears 3rd in the list of innovators. So I think there is a very strong correlation, and I don't think you can. And you look at companies like Microsoft and Amazon, they have a product and a service portfolio mix. Product is and service may be invention centric, and the way it gets scaled into market could be innovation centric, right? But to your question, specifically on technology itself, right? So if I look at innovation led by technology, we've been talking about singularity for a long time, right? It still may be hypothetical, right? You may not look at singularity at least for the next 20, 30 years, right? But what that is leading to is giving birth to a concept of intelligent enterprise, right? And I'll probably spend a little bit, one more minute on that in terms of what an intelligent enterprise means and how innovation is driving that today, right? Look at down when the lockdown happened last year, right? While many companies struggled to survive, a few companies, and Amazon, Microsoft, Zoom, are examples of companies that thrived and did very well even in the lockdown, right? And interestingly, it's not just that the fact that they were in the cloud or the fact that they had the right product. It was way beyond that, right? And that way beyond that is an important factor. And so to what Shreyas mentioned in terms of looking at the R&D spend and looking at a click that happens on Amazon, look at the ripple effect that you can see by that click going all across the entire life cycle, right? Supply chain, to vendor management to customer relationship management. Everything gets impacted out there, and they can fairly reconfigure the entire business models in no time. So it's all of these coming together, right? If you look at the apart from R&D factor, which becomes important, it is people skills, diversity. It is important to strategically think, conceptualize, visualize, bring it all together. Culture, desire, purpose, all of these will play an important role from a innovation drivers or standpoints apart from R&D. I think I would take that as my stand at the moment.
Right, that's a valid point made. In fact, as you mentioned about the people and the skills and the diversity that takes importance in due course of the business, I would like to know how critical it is to build a diverse talent pool, within the organization for an organization like yours.
Okay, so I'll look. So again, if I go back and look at why diversity is important today from a service innovation standpoint, and I'll stick to IT industry. I'll stick to technology and emerging tech areas because that's my where I spend a lot of my time. But let's look at the layers today, right? Uh, most talent becomes most critical in innovation ecosystem, right? Look at IT. What IT did was basically decision support, communication. It established an enterprise systems for organizations. If I look at OT, right, it's all about operations technology, managing, monitoring, controlling systems became important, right? And you blended IT and OT in the past, maybe about 10 years back, and we started talking of smart enterprises, right? And we looked at hands-free operations, right? I'll talk about it more if I have time later on. But but in the pandemic world today, you're talking of human-free operations. Healthcare is a good example where you wanted no human being in the entire space there, right? Now, if you look at engineering tech blending back into the IT and OT tech, right, you're able to go and revisualize talent way differently, right? And then go into gaming tech and visual representations, gaming and simulation part. So if I converge IT, OT, engineering tech, and game tech into a single frame of reference and take enterprises intelligent and make intelligent enterprises human free as a path to success going forward, right? The whole idea, and if you look at, and the reason I'm spending a little more time on this is because the talent diversity becomes very important, right? If I look at digital in the virtual world as a concept today, right? You're looking at probably everything that we've ever seen in the past, 30, 40, 50 years in technology come together and drive efficiencies out there, right? So while you organically can keep building skills across boundaries for an enterprise becomes a critical success factor. Uh, Business models, I think if I look at business models itself, right? In the post-pandemic world, probably the model itself will cease to exist. It may not be relevant, it may collapse itself, right? And a good diverse talent pool will become life-saving. It will not become a good to have stuff, right? And there are very good examples of what we've seen in the past and what's happening in the current cycle also, in terms of how talent has played a key role in demystifying complexities and fuzzy environments and helping drive innovation there.
So I'm sorry, but Mr. Hunkun, when you say that talent has played an important role in demystifying, would you say that a cross-disciplinary and a collaborative approach is preferred over teams working in silos? Because there are some companies who are big companies, Fortune 500 companies, who do promote working in silos. They do not promote cross-disciplinary approach. So what in your view would be preferred?
Yeah, you know what? Any innovation, unless it's diversity of skills, you need a different perspective for innovation to happen, right? You need a financial view, you need an engineering view, creative view. So diversity becomes very important. Crowdsourcing. If I look at the IT industry itself today, we're thriving, we're growing. Some of the best results have been seen the last quarter, and it's showing fairly positive going forward. Crowdsourcing becomes a very important aspect, right? And you'll see that becoming a lot more prevalent when you look at gig economies, uh, looking at gig economies evolving into crowdsourcing platforms. So it is going to be collaborative because the very fact I said, right? If I look at information tech, operations tech, these themselves are huge pillars as industrial ecosystems among themselves. Engineering tech again is a complete industry itself by its own, right? if you have to bring all of this together and help customers leverage and use that, it has to be collaborative innovation, and it has to be a very different form of innovation. Right? And if you look at even let me quickly go back to the Amazon story itself, right? Because if I look at Amazon story itself, the whole see they built a new multi-billion-dollar business every 6 years, and I'm saying a new multi-billion-dollar business from bookstore to cloud to where they are today, right? They added a 1.6 trillion market cap in just 27 years.
Mhm.
Now, to think of that coming from diverse industries, diverse skill sets to create that impact. So even if corporates are doing it within themselves, they do have the diversity in terms of skill sets, in terms of knowledge base, in terms of ability to be able to translate ideas and concepts into reality.
Thank you. Mr. Bakshi, I saw you raised your hand. And one quick thing that I would really appreciate if you could bring your experience on the table about hiring and collaborating across borders.
Yeah. So yeah, having worked across, I mean, of course, there are many panelists here who have also worked across the borders. But I have worked even as a consultant as well as a kind of a leader or whatever in different spaces. One thing that we have realized is people are the same wherever you go. Okay, that is a very famous statement by a famous author. So I forget the name, but yeah, it's there. What is required is not cross-functional or cultural diversity. What is really required is a mindset diversity, and we typically tend to get people into that kind of a zone. And to get some real great innovations forward, my experience has been we need to form a very small common purpose team, CPT. We have started calling it a CPT, not a CFT. CFT is cross-functional team. Okay. See, people who are passionate about a purpose, you should be signed on to the purpose. See, in innovation, nobody has done this thing before. So it's not that you know this, so it's not a project. It's like a kind of a mission, completely different kind of a mission. And you should be prepared to deal with completely unknowns, too many unknowns on the way, and be unforeseen skills. How are you going to equip yourself to get those unforeseen skills is all innovation about. This is again thing which another point that I come across that silos versus collaboration and cross-functional. All that is again trying to do the new thing with the old mindset. Of course, in engineering, collaboration or getting a product out, collaboration is important and collaboration is required. But in innovation, who are you going to collaborate with? You don't even know right now. Today, your needs might be.
Organization. When we're talking about collaboration, we're talking about within the organization.
No, when you have to take an innovation forward, then you need the organization, right?
Yeah.
Depends upon what is the scope of that innovation. And just because we sort of mixed R&D and people dimension together, let me just try and add another point to the R&D spend of it. R&D is one dimension of it, as Ishita also mentioned.
Yeah.
Right? But are you allocating enough funds for innovation? Because as we said, product, technology, process improvement, business model, everything is there, right? What are you trying to do to add value at each and every level or improve productivity at each and every level? See, the companies that I've worked with, they have only focused on process improvements, okay? And they've added 10% of the profits from process improvements. The case story is there in the book. If anybody is interested, they can read it. Now imagine for 4 to 5 consecutive years of my association with them, year on year, the company adding 10% of profits through innovation projects, and they're continuing to do it even after my handholding has been taken away as a consultant, right? So that is something that innovation can deliver. So allocating funds this is a kind of a spectrum that you require. Other thing, as Mr. Tiwari mentioned, various stages of innovation are required, and you need funds for every stage. But the starting point is not just the customer need. Starting point is your mindset. How are you defining your business? Are you having a dream? See, take big companies or corporates that we are talking about. They're getting into so many different industries, right? There are very few corporates which are remaining focused only on one industry, right? Take Mahindra, for example. Mahindra is not just an auto, right? Take Tata's, take Reliance, take anything, or take global companies, GE or anyone. They've not remained focused on one particular product. They've gone into so many industries. You take a simple example. I mean, this is an example that we used to keep giving as consultants that, Novo Pen, if at all people know about it, it's a drug delivery device for diabetes. So this company was into drugs, and they said, we are drug manufacturers. They'll only focus on drugs. The moment they see that, okay, now my drug cannot go, to increase the sale till the time the delivery mechanism is not, what you call embarrassment free. Every time someone has to carry a needle and do something, okay, sorry, I have to go out. This is like a pen, you just carry it with you. There is no stigma around it. And he just gives up, takes a pen, takes a shot, and it's done and dusted. So, this kind of things, the moment you start defining your organization very differently, your aspirations will drive a lot of, your requirements.
Mhm.
I can go on and on in terms of examples. There was another one, you can look at Life Straw. They were a textile garment manufacturing company. They went into making water filtration units.
Yeah.
And that is being used in, in remote areas, where people can actually take sewage water and drink it. There's a picture available on internet where the founder of this Life Straw is actually drinking water from sewage. And it's potable, it's drinkable. So how you define business, how you define your aspirations, that becomes a driving point. And R&D is like, people talk about, someone has coined a word, capital R, small r, capital D, small d. So how do you define your R&D is also going to be mattering a lot. While from UK, when I'd come to India for a lot of, R&D tie-ups, most of the R&D companies in India were just talking about the small d. No, they define everything. We only do testing out here.
Yeah. So that is exactly what we were trying to draw out of this question over here, that allocation of R&D funds is not the only factor, not the only driving factor behind innovation. So we wanted to know more about that. Quickly, I would like to bring Ms. Shivli over here, since she adds another perspective to this entire conversation. How I would like to understand from you how external collaborations are fueling innovation to further your organizations, or in your experience, how outside collaborations have worked in fueling innovation to fulfill your long-term goals.
Right. So focusing more on the healthcare sector, right? While internal innovations definitely make a lot of difference, a large part of the healthcare industry works on sourcing innovations, right? Especially on the technology side. So I will actually go out and see what are the new devices in the market, what are the new technologies, are people developing something interesting that will benefit my doctors, can something improve patient outcomes, right? Some of these I can drive internally through process changes, but some I need, whether it's a Da Vinci robot for operations, or a simple an improved version of a stethoscope. These are not things that I will develop internally in the hospital, but I do go out, right? And we work not just with people who have actually created something and want to come and sell it to us, but also people across the innovation value chain. So a lot of times people come to us with ideas, and some of these could even be doctors who have worked in for so many years, and they found these are the gaps, and they have an idea, but they don't know what to do with it, right? So how do we take that idea and convert it into a device that he can use for his patients? How do we test it? How do we prototype it, validate it? So there are different phases, and we work with people across the value chain and help them in every possible way, right? So if a person comes to me with saying, I have made this prototype, but I don't know if it will work, or I want to validate something, or can you help me raise funds? I've made it, but I need money to take it to the market. So these are all very important steps in taking a product into the market, and that is where that's where people like us also come in and help them. Tomorrow, if you like it, I may just use it in my hospital. I've tested it, I've developed it, I've got clinicians to give inputs to improve the product. So it's a wholesome innovation that I can actually come back and use in my own hospital. So for that, I require of course, I need doctors to give me the right clinical inputs, but I also need technical people who can understand the science. I need business administration people who can understand, create a business plan. I need people who understand finance and venture funding. And, I need engineers who can make the box and you can, on an engineering bench, test it. I need clinical research people who can actually validate it in a hospital setup. So there's a whole, our image of a hospital is confined to, there has to be doctors, nurses, and administrators to run the hospital. But now we need a lot of people beyond them to be able to ensure that some of these innovations actually happen and to also bring them back into the hospital. So in our experience, and that's why in my office here, we have a whole variety of people who work on this. I myself am not a doctor, so I don't have that background, but I have plenty of people who can help me with that. But I bring something to the table which will help them in that innovation,
As
right?
Dr. Tiwari was saying, it happens from top down.
Absolutely. So, it has to be driven from the top, because you cannot just one day get up and say, I want my company to be innovative. No, that culture has to be ingrained. Are you providing the right environment? Can people actually openly speak, give ideas? Will you appreciate it if someone gives you a new idea? So all of that really makes a difference. And again, because things are so competitive and so complex, and now your market is not just a city or a town, it's a global market. That's why you need diverse people who will come with different thoughts, different ideas, and really give you that something you've never thought of, but when you start discussing it, you realize, yeah, there is something of value here. So yeah, you need people of diverse backgrounds, diverse talents to come together today to really help a company innovate.
Sure. Mr. Hungun, you wanted to add something to this?
Yeah, a very quick one. One innovation that I wanted to quickly highlight. Based on Ishta's message. So we worked on a cough detection using AI, and it's a CSR initiative. You can definitely Google it. You'll see a set of white papers on that. But if you look at the entire project, right, it's about you taking a cough sample for about 10 seconds on your smartphone, and in about 7 to 10 seconds, you'll get a pre-screening and triaging whether the sample is COVID positive or healthy, right? Now, to build this, over the last 8 months, we've worked with audiometrist, a cancer specialist of throat. We've worked with a surgeon who's a robotic nurse from HCG Hospital. All of these, Dr. Vishal Rao himself was mentoring this project, right? We had a whole list of people from technology, right? Machine learning experts, deep learning experts, explainable AI experts, data scientists, all of them came together. In about 4 months, we built the entire model and we went live, right? And so it's a good example of how innovation can transform life, especially in this fast-changing world today, right? It's a fairly simple URL, covidassist.wipro.com. Any of you can just log in there and give a sample, and in 10 seconds get a data point right there.
So I think there's a lot of discussion about having this diverse talent pool collaborating among themselves. So how does it work in terms of incentivizing this talent pool?
Yes, we have a process, a kind of a standard process in our company. Basically, there are things that everyone knows about, like you pay some money when an idea comes, then you pay some more money if you file a patent on that. Airbus being essentially a European company, there are a lot of regulations again in European countries about what you should pay and how. We also have some kind of payments when your invention goes into a product or a process. But those are kind of standard across companies, so I will not go deeply into that. Incentivizing is, the monetary payment is one thing, but incentivizing essentially depends on, do people feel good about themselves on an average when they come up with a new idea? That means, are they taken seriously? Do people listen to them? Is there a process by which people can be sort of first heard, then compensated if necessary, but at least told that yes, this is how you should be working. And the simple thing is how we measure that is again, it goes into the IP area. So how many, for example, disclosures come per head of your R&D staff? Okay. And if some particular area is not looking good, then at least it raises a red flag telling that a lot of things are not coming out from that particular technology area and things like that. Now, remember that in commercial aviation, which is one part of our business. Of course, we are also pretty large in helicopters, space, and defense. But in commercial aviation, we are sitting at the top of a pyramid. We are ultimate users of a lot of products developed by other companies. And so we always have to. In fact, a thumb rule is that probably 20% of the technology we use in our products we develop ourselves, and 80% we take from outside. So a continuous challenge for us is also to see if we are developing something which is much easier, cheaper, available outside with one of our regular suppliers, or even with a third party in universities. And that is the real challenge for incentivizing innovation, whether we want to incentivize something in-house or whether we want to go out looking for something which is already available externally, or we want to say fund some research in one of the the technology labs or universities. And in that case, we have always had to struggle, because the point is, for example, 20 years back, aircraft was essentially an engineering item. Okay, you have enough number of mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, structural engineers. You can make an aircraft. Now aircraft is, I will say, more than 50% about communication, electronics, God knows what. Really, you have to be inside this business to know what is coming. And so, how do we continuously stay on top of this challenge? So, right now, for example, we are trying to include a bit more of software, electronics, communication technologies. But the mechanical challenges don't go away. You have to have an aircraft which goes through all the misbehavior that we do make it through, and go through say 30,000 takeoff and landing cycles. So it's the issue is there. In our case, the issue is there, and probably a lot of other businesses, the issue is there. The issue is, what do you incentivize? And for that, again, I'll come to my favorite topic. It is more about deciding what you want to do, deciding where the technology and the business is going, and what will be needed 20 years hence. Because you can't, 20 years later, you want a great communication technologist who will be sitting at somewhere and flying an aircraft on the other part of the world. You can't just hire that person in a day and train in 6 months and do that. You have to start hiring those people now. You have to incentivizing their research, even though it probably will not be used to your current aircraft. That's the challenge. That's what we are kind of seeing in our day-to-day life.
Well, this is an important perspective that you added, where you said that maybe only 20% of the innovation or inventions are coming from inside, and then there's another part of it which is coming from outside. In fact, 80%, to the extent of 80%, which is huge here. Also, Ishita mentioned about the kind of ecosystem that we need to create here, in where the people are comfortable talking about and coming up with their ideas. This brings me to my next question. Whether the failed attempts of the inventors, innovators, how are they handled at the organizations?
I think the way you encourage people to innovate, the same way you have to, if the innovation doesn't work, you still have to provide them the right support. And that is critical, right? It's not, first of all, you need to see, why did it not work? Or did you ensure that your business requirements were aligned in such a way that it would promote some innovation? Did you ensure there was no interdepartment friction? Did you, on the one hand, you want them to innovate, but on the other hand, there's so much competition between the departments that they don't want to share. So I think it's, you need to embrace the fact that not every innovation will work. Some will and some won't. And instead of criticizing or looking down upon people whose innovations didn't work, maybe they require certain form of training. Like Dr. Tiwari said, think what you need 10 years down the line and start training people today, right? So when the employee knows that you're training him for something that you foresee in the future, they also feel good about it. They feel relevant and part of an organization, that you have enough faith that you are training them for something that will come 10 years down the line, right? And I've seen companies like GE and Philips do it very well. When it comes to future training, to ensure that in the future, when you need certain things, you have people ready to provide you that. So yeah, I mean, you could fail today, but you have to ensure that people, don't take it in the wrong way, and you need to continue supporting your folks and continue encouraging innovation within the teams.
Sure. Mr. Bakshi, how does it work with your CPT?
So let me not give any, see, all the intellectual answers are there, in this world, saying this is how it's be done, blah, blah, blah. Failures are to be handled this way, all of that. And then companies offer, dare to fail, dare to dream, those kind of awards, and things happen, right? I'm going to talk to you about 2 or 3 ground reality, stories, which we came across when we were working with the teams. So first was about this rewards and recognition kind of a thing. So the biggest reward and recognition that an innovator wants is this idea to be implemented. Take it to any industry. This is what they want to see, their concepts, their ideas come to reality and market, right? Now, there could be hundreds of other challenges around it, and they have to be faced, and the thing. So the request from the innovators was, so you don't give me any reward, you don't give me any incentive, see that how can my idea get implemented. Another was, again, from the reward recognition and incentive scheme. So managers were saying, no, we should give incentives, and they had done some schemes around it. So one team shared their experience, saying earlier, they had some other, like Six Sigma and Kaizens and those kind of initiatives keep happening. So they had a point system, and there used to be competition between teams. So for first 1 or 2 years, there was tough competition, but our team always used to win. Now, this is a person sharing, right? He's saying our team always used to win. So seeing this, other teams started, then after 2 or 3 years, they stopped competing at all. They are going to win, why should we put in efforts? So they stopped putting efforts. A year or 2 later, they said, we stopped putting in efforts because we knew we are only going to win. There's no competition. So we ourselves stopped putting in more efforts and doing something around it. So you notice this is actually not helping, it is hindering. So how do you actually create an environment where people can really uncover those kind of, the leaders have a kind of a right aspiration. How can people come up with the kind of concepts for those aspirations, and then you drive an experiment around it? As Satish just mentioned, only 10% of innovation is going to come from your industry. I mean, when he was saying this, I remembered my flight of Airbus A380, where the business class was like a complete different launch, and you'd go and travel in any other aircraft with in a business class, and it just doesn't feel the same. Emirates A380 business class is like completely different. So it's an experience and an interior design. I think it's becoming more interior. Engineering is becoming hygiene. Of course, you can't ignore engineering, right? The moment you start ignoring engineering, you'll start flying somewhere else. Okay. So this is what happens. The other thing was around patents. Now, where there was so much of stiff competition, there was the innovators were feeling that my idea is being taken over by someone else, and he's filing patent in his name. The idea was mine. So then everybody stopped putting things. So avoid creating competitions. Here is my humble suggestion, and my experience says that please avoid creating competitions around innovation. Try and see that how all innovators come forward and then collaborate with one another. But typically, when we are doing ideation sessions, I don't know how many of the audience, I saw some audience coming in from Egypt, but we'll try and translate this for them in, I'll say something in Hindi, because this anthem has become and this song has become an anthem for almost all Indians. Mille sur mera tumhara to sur bane hamara, right? It's not my tune, it's not your tune. Together, when the tune gets played, it becomes a kind of a very different symphony altogether. So innovation is all about that. How do you encourage this in that enabling environment? It's something that is going to be really taking the innovation to the next level and incentivizing it to the right way. This is my experience and the way in which I have tried to handle it. And the companies that have said we have had enough of R&R practices, they had very mature R&R practices. When they actually took this approach and they created a different manual for incentivizing innovation, it became a very different environment altogether. Again,
and Mr. Bakshi, I'm sorry to interrupt you over here. So, but do you think that creation of IP is also an incentive that employees see and drives them towards innovation? Because that is our personal experience. That is what we have seen.
So as I said, in the environment where IP was being treated as a kind of a parameter, there were this kind of fights. That was my idea. Someone else took over, and now he's claiming it in his name.
But that doesn't satisfy the long term, as I was saying earlier as well. That doesn't satisfy the long term goal of the organization.
No, what is the long term goal of the organization? IP is not the long term goal of the organization.
No. If you foster the culture of innovation.
Yeah, foster the culture of innovation is a objective, right? So which is where you have to create that environment. So forget about IP. I mean, IP net. What is IP doing? IP is trying to protect your interests versus your competitors. Now, why are you creating a competition within your own organization? That if you come up, let's say, sorry, I'm just taking.
But Mr. Bakshi, my understanding is that healthy competition never hurt anyone.
Can I just complete?
Sure, you can.
Yeah. So if I said, okay, Mr. Tiwari, I'm just looking at the 6 people in this channel. Mr. Tiwari, how many innovations have you come up with? Ms. Shivli, how many have you come up with? So then it creates a kind of a competition. You call it healthy. Your intention is healthy. But the way in which it gets translated in a large organization is not necessarily healthy is what I'm trying to tell you. How do you make not competition, but collaboration? Why do you want, see now even everybody's talking about co-optation, even amongst competitors, even in the industry. All the telecom industry people are coming together to create towers, common infrastructure. I mean, think collaboration, think what you can create together. Where is this healthy competition? The competition, what is to go out of the window? There is nothing like competition. It's all, we are all working towards a common purpose. Common purpose is the improvement of the mankind. Simple. What are you going to leave behind to the next generation? So I think the moment you redefine the whole competition and the kind of purpose in front of people is when the whole energy is very different. In fact, we created a small CPT and it's just a last year's experience. The things which under CFT happened in about 3 to 4 years, happened in 3 weeks time flat. And this is a statement from them. This is their experience. I'm not even making claims. So, that is an enabling environment that we are talking about. And just to sort of go back to the earlier point of, leveraging external ecosystem, this is a reality that external in the corporates and the corporates are less nimble-footed. Startups and external world is more nimble-footed, right? So they have to come up with more and more because the corporates have to think in terms of scale and execution. It's a fundamental difference world over. When I was working in UK, also we had the same experience, right? Now, the beauty is the people who are driving external ecosystems, and I think I would, again, when I say this, I would invite Ishita and Praveen to add to it. The corporates sometimes get diluted and their KPIs become the VC type KPIs. How many startups have we now converted into unicorns? Now, that is a kind of a KPIs that get translated into. Now, I have to then flag up to them and say, hold on, what is your intent? And there was a very, very nice statement that someone made in Silicon Valley saying, as corporates, you don't need to fund the inventions or startups, right? There are enough people, enough venture capitalists doing funding. You give them a platform to experiment, to try, right? And you look at how are you going to really scale up this whole thing and how is your business objective going to go further faster? That should be your KPI. Not how many startups did you groom, how many startups became unicorns. That's not your objective. That is someone else's objective. That's a VC objective for sure. Correct. But as corporates, you have to look at how are your products and services becoming more efficient, more effective, more valuable to your customers, better and better. And how will your startup ecosystem help you do that? This is the kind of KPIs that we have to be slightly clear about. There's a very small difference, but I think I just want to put a point here on the table, and I would invite Ishita and Praveen also to add their thoughts to this. I hope I've addressed your point.
Sure. I think I would just like to add in here that, in my opinion, I think IP creates a premium for the products and processes. And also IP is not just about patents. It also envisages the protection of brands, designs, copyrights, trade secrets, I think, which we have seen work for the companies worldwide. Also, another thing that here is that IP is not always used as a I would say, as something to generate revenue. It is also used as a defense against the third parties who may want to come after you, wherein you may, as Dr. Tiwari mentioned about the cross-licensing perspective. I think that is also the value that IP rights create. So maybe I would like to bring in Mr. Hungund on it. What is your take on it?
So Tarun, yeah, thanks. I think if I look at it from perspective of I'll use two dimensions: a horizon one thinking and a horizon two or three thinking. Right. Uh, the moment I look at a little more forward-looking, art of possible thinking from a innovation standpoint or business standpoint, these are early seeds, the early stage innovations where you want to really go back and protect your rights to it, right? Versus solving today's problems, which is more collaborative. If I'm looking, solving example of when we built the COVID cough app, right? We never bothered patenting. We said, let's go all out and solve the problem there, right? Problem, became first. Versus if I go back and talk of maybe some other tech like general intelligence today, right? When I look at general intelligence, I'm solving problems. I want to bring a showroom into your living room. My approach is how many patents can I actually file there, and how much of protection can I do for my copyright, my idea, my product. So it's a blend. I think the purpose becomes important, but I think sustainability will happen. Survival will happen if well protected patents are there. I think that would be my perspective there.
So, Ms. Shivli, how does healthcare space work in this aspect?
So I think our experience in healthcare has been that over the years, the role of IP has changed. We're moving more towards co-innovation, co-development, and in that sense, co-IPs as well, right? There are numerous cases where today two big entities come to the table. Both of them put in, very clearly state, this is what I bring to the table. This is my IP. Now, there was a point where hospitals used to think that, well, I'm just giving input, so I'm just providing access to patient data. But today we know data is huge. I mean, it's a big IP for me, right? Whatever advice my doctors are giving, whatever point of view they're giving, that's my IP, right? So why would I give it to you free of cost, right? So we're saying, don't add a financial element to it, but this is my IP, this is yours. Let us come together and make something. Now, what comes out of it is something which is new, and so let there be a joint IP on that. And I think that model is working well, because increasingly now people know that, okay, they're not going to get cheated. They don't feel that, oh, maybe I should have asked for something else. But I know that whatever we are creating, both of us, our intentions are clear. We're putting in 100% effort, and both of us will own what is created, right? So that is what is really working for us these days. And I think that is the way we will see things going in the future as well.
Thank you, Ms. Shivli, for sharing your point of view. I think now we are going to quickly move towards the Q&A round. There are quite a few questions. So the first question from the audience is, for companies having a well-established R&D, putting their inventions into the innovation cycle seems like an easier task than for entrepreneurs struggling with limited resources. What are the key aspects we should pay attention to for avoiding waste our resources and having successful entrance into the innovation circle? Dr. Tiwari, would you like to answer this question?
Sure. Basically, as far as I understand it, it's coming from the point of view of internal innovation of a company, isn't it? Yeah. So I will probably just repeat what I told. Point is, inventions come, and employees or people working under contract from you might be having ideas, and they might disclose it. There's nothing wrong in considering that to see if you want that. But when you, for example, when you protect your IP or when you bring something in your product, it will help a lot for the innovators or the technology people or whoever is innovating to have a good idea of exactly what and how this particular innovation is going to be used in a product. Because see, the people who actually are thinking about products and product life cycles and what is going to come after 5 years they are not always very clear about where your invention fits in their product plan, okay, or even processes. So for the innovators or internally the company, the one thing I would say is, don't just finish your invention and throw it, across the wall, telling that, "Hi, here is a cool invention I've done. Do what you want with it."
Mm.
It is much more fruitful if you do some homework, decide where the innovation can be used in by the company, and make a very clear statement about that to whoever is deciding if your product could be, or if your invention could be used by the company or not. Clearer you are in conveying this particular point of how your invention will help the company meet customer needs, and or increase productivity and things like that, easier it will be for the people who are making that decision to consider your innovation. Similarly, even for people outside, it's very difficult for people outside to go into a big corporate and tell that, here is my invention, and do what you want to do. In fact, corporates are very scared to take any external invention, even consider, even read, because of a lot of legal issues. People might tell later on, if a similar kind of product comes out from that company, you might sue the company telling that it was my idea, where the person who actually did that thing never even saw your idea. So if you're external to a particular company, I don't know, but it's going to be very difficult. If you're inside the company, you know where to go, whom to meet, and how to convince that person. Your idea is your property. Your idea is your product. If you think like an intrapreneur within a company, you have a product to sell. And then learn a little bit of how you meet customer needs, and learn a little bit of selling, tactics. It will help a lot.
For addressing this question so concisely. To the next question. Go ahead.
Okay, so the next question that we have is open for all the panelists, and the person has asked that the companies make choices between short run and the long run, where the innovation flourishes. So investments on a breakthrough innovation, they get neglected to manage short-term P&L. How do you manage this tension in the system? Sure, Mr. Bakshi, please go ahead.
So I just typed the answer there, and again we had this debate, and when I set up this thing at an organization, and the case story is there in the book, we have to create adequate handshake points, right? And I typically say, use any kind of a thumb rule. Some people say 70%, 20%, 10%, 5-3-2, 3-1, whatever, but don't ignore any of the spectrums. That is most complex, intermediate, and small improvements. You have to cover all the spectrums. You can have 5. If you don't have the kind of right kind of wherewithal, focus on 5 small term, small increments, 2 medium ones, and 1 long term, or 1 more complex one. But you should have a right mechanism to integrate. So, which means a team that is working on more complex projects should have at least some representation from the midterm kind of a thing. And then once it goes to the next level, there has to be someone from the operational side also in working on it, so that they get a full sense of what is happening and how to then take it forward. So one thing which is there about innovation is there are a lot of soft knowledge. Not everything is well documented, can't be well documented. So there are people being available and overlapping is going to be a key thing to make this happen. That is my experience. Over to others for this.
So I was still looking at the last part of the question. So how do you manage the short-term versus long-term and breakthrough, right? Now, I'll give a more generic answer, obviously. I'll probably look at it more from a horizon 1, which is addressing the problem in a near term, a 6 months to 12-month cycle, versus horizon 2, which can be 2 or 3 can be breakthrough and can be very futuristic, right? And so I would look at it from a perspective of breakthroughs uh, and how breakthroughs can drive art of possible in the future. And now I can probably quote more examples later on. But breakthrough there is more a long-term strategy, right? Whereas breakthrough like the workspace solution that I spoke of earlier, right? It was more here now. It was available. A lot of investments did go into making that scale. And scale when you talk of in services industries is you know tens or hundreds of thousands, right? And that's the scale that you're looking at. So I think it's a balance between what is short-term breakthrough and what is long-term breakthrough, right? And something hits the P&L top line, something hits the P&L bottom line, right? But it's more about how you can actually uh, play and focus and drive. And I think it's a decision from the management rather than it's a transaction, right? It's a more strategic input that will be required to look at what should be the focus there.
Okay.
And most companies, in my mind, divide both. They have equal focus on short term, they have equal focus on long term. Both become very important. When both blend, you start realizing that white spaces are fixed, your new products are getting launched, new services are getting mapped. So it's probably a blend and mix and match of both.
Thank you for addressing that question. Our next question is, how does an organization communicate to the employees that their ideas are welcome and valued? Mr. Bakshi, I would like to pull you in on this.
Yeah, so typically, I would say live the intent. The senior management has to genuinely live the intent of encouraging innovation. And I mentioned in a case story there, one team had challenged the collaborator specifications and come up with something radical. Now the chairman came to know about this through somewhere. The next time when the chairman was visiting the company, there was a big, reception set up at the main office area. The chairman skipped all of that, went back into the plant, straight away went and met this person. Now imagine what is this going to do to the person and what is the message that is going out to the rest of the organization. That do something like this. You are being valued.
Mm.
Okay. So when something like live the intent is a fundamental thing. You have to live the intent. As long as you live the intent, and or a lot of things will happen. And then how does each one live the intent is completely up to the individual. Right? There are many different ways in which different people will live the intent. But if you don't live the intent, trust me, everybody is human. They will see through you. Right? Even a child sees through a parent saying, he's trying to pull a fast one on me, right? So people are human. They see through the people not living the intent. And of course, then there are many things that can be done. But I think fundamentally, to me, this has come out to be the strongest point and the common denominator across all organizations where things have succeeded, and where things have not succeeded, people have seen through this.
Person has asked that are the organizations in India open to offer patent rights to their employees, or will they like patents to be licensed from their employees? So, Ms. Shivli, if you can take this.
I think organizations are becoming more flexible now, right? Within our own organization, we have seen both situations. We have we have people who have worked on something, and obviously the organization owns the IP on that. But there are also situations where we have promoted spin-offs, and we've promoted them, our own employees, to act as entrepreneurs having their own startups, in which case the IP is definitely owned by them and not by us. So it's what value that you're adding to the organization, right? So by making a flat statement saying no, all IP needs to be owned by the organization, you may be driving away a lot of new innovations that could have come in, or research that could actually have benefited you. So I'm seeing that there is now corporates are quite open to looking at a mix now, and are not so staunch on how they want to. It's at the end of the day, how does it affect your organization and your goals?
Can I just add the NHS experience here? See, NHS also had a very similar. When I worked with NHS Innovations in London, they also had all healthcare professions had to declare their innovations to the trust, and the trust used to in turn ask the innovation hub to handle it. There also the trust had a formula of how to share the revenues or the IP with the professionals. So it is not just about India. I think it is world over, and I think as Ishita mentioned, everywhere people are changing and they're becoming more conscious and sensitive about what the situation is and how it needs to be.
Thank you. So our last question for the session is, what happens if innovation is outsourced, especially the employees who are disgruntled? Dr. Tiwari, would you like to take this question?
The last part, could you repeat, especially if the employees
are disgruntled?
Yeah, there is no easy answer to this one. See, innovation should not be outsourced. What should be outsourced is your business plan, your business model. So, what you have decided to do yourself, the innovation should come from in-house. What you have decided to do through partners, third parties, they should do their own innovation. So point is, you should never attack this question from the outsourcing innovation mode. It should be what we want to develop inside. If your business model says that a part, for example, in Airbus, a large part of our business is, for example, developing new kind of composite materials or new kind of communication technologies. Airbus internally doesn't develop at present, except small bits and pieces here and there. It doesn't presently develop either new materials, new composites, or new kind of communication technologies. Though Airbus does a lot of technical work in trying to bring out a particular type of communication technology in an aircraft. So whatever is Airbus's internal area that we divide it like make and buy. So whatever is our make area, there we are completely focused on all the innovation doing in-house. Even though we might buy new technology in those areas where we have a gap, but we'll never think of outsourcing the innovation of our make areas. What are our buy areas? We depend on our partners to develop, innovate, and as far as we are concerned, we give them what is our requirements. According to my previous company, GE's language, CTQs, critical to quality, and they innovate on that. So in that case, we are mostly focused on what we want in that particular material, what properties we want, or in that communication technology, what speed we want. And in many cases, we do both. We sort of decide that we'll partner a particular company. For example, in FMS, flight management systems, and those kind of electronics / communication / computer technology, and there we kind of jointly develop the things. The disgruntlement might come in that part where we were jointly working with somebody. Some guy internally might come with an idea, and we might decide that an external idea is better. But in that case, basically all I have to say is that you go case by case and see to it that better ideas win, and also there is no communication failure early on, so that the employees always know what is required and what we are trying to do. But this is more of a I should say the human resource management issue.
But I think that is what we have been talking about all this while, that people are the most important, they are the most important unit towards driving innovation. So somewhere this will definitely come in.
Yeah, as I told, it's all about having right communication and having trust of your employees. If you don't have trust of your employees, fire the manager, basically. It's as simple as
that. Data point I can give you, while there's a platform called Top Coder, right? So from a expert to enterprise, outsourcing of innovation and development work, and you could study the model. All I would say is the person who's asked that question, especially in the gig economy, some of the niche skills are getting a lot more scarce, rarer, and difficult to acquire for enterprises. There are certain models where you would look at outsourcing innovation. And Topcoder is a very good example, one of the largest crowdsourcing platform in the world today. Right? You could take a look, study that. Happy to take questions offline on that if there anything specific.
Thank you so much. So with this, we've come to a close of our discussion. I would like to thank all the panelists here for such an insightful discussion we've had today. And any questions, I believe, which are remaining can be taken up offline. Thank you so much, all of you.